Winning in NASCAR might just seem like the bare minimum, and surely it can't be that hard considering the sheer randomness of motorsports. But in actuality, it's more difficult than anyone can imagine. The other 39 drivers won't just sit still. You not only have to win over other drivers' battles, but the ultimate war. And for some drivers, this war can continue for ages. Right now, the talk of the town is whether Kevin Harvick will ever win again. But this question has also been raised over other drivers. And while some might have given up on them, they never gave up on the slim chance that luck might deal them a good hand. Of course, I'm not going to be talking about the number of races before a win, but the number of races between certain wins. So, let's get into it. Number 10, Jeremy Mayfield, 142 races. Easily one of Mayfield's most iconic wins, and one that's his personal favorite is the 2000 Pocono 500. Mayfield and Earnhardt played strategy to get ahead of the rest of the field and duked it out for themselves. Mayfield had a huge run down the short chute on the final lap, and then he did the unthinkable. Many fondly remember Earnhardt for the antics he would play in your rearview mirror, but to think that the Intimidator was eating somebody else's dust? His fans were obviously not going to have it, pelting him with beer cans, and Earnhardt was going to give the insignia of every angry racer. This would be Jeremy's second win of the season, and many thought things were going to get better from here on out. However, they didn't. A concussion that sidelined him for 2 weeks ensued after the Pocono win. Disagreements between him and his teammate Rusty Wallace, being fired by Team Penske and trying to fit into Evernham, all in the span of a few years. His first year with Evernham in 2002 was rough, finishing 26th in points. But in true Mayfield fashion, he always found a way to improve. He finished 19th in 2003, with a few more top 10s and top 5s. In 2004, it was the same song and dance. Heading into the regular season finale before the chase, he had 3 top 5s and 9 top 10s, highlighted by a pole at Dover. He was sitting 14th in points and was a long shot to make that inaugural chase. How could he get in? Well, you need to lead the most laps and win. Impossible. Well, if that is that, then he did the impossible, because not only did rival contenders fall out, but he fell in. Number 9, Dale Earnhardt Jr., 143 races. When Dale Earnhardt Jr. first moved to Hendrick, there was a sense of excitement filled with skepticism. Well, this is a new team and a new environment, a much fresher one compared to DEI, but what if it's too much change? The first year, 2008, he had a pretty solid campaign, making the inaugural chase and even getting a win in Michigan. But while it was roses and rainbows in 2008, it would be nothing but weeds and bees moving forward. In 2009, he scored just 2 top 5s and 3 top 10s, recording a 25th place points finish. That's the kind of fall you'd expect from a guy who sat out a couple of races, but he didn't sit out. In 2010, it was the same thing, finishing as high as the upper 20s and sporadically getting top 5s and top 10s. It wasn't like the equipment was bad. Jimmy just won his 5th title in a row. Mark just came off his 5th heartbreak. Jeff Gordon, though on a winless streak of his own, still mustered some flashes of brilliance. Something had to change. Well, let's bring in a new crew chief, out with Lance McGrew and in with Steve Letarte. What was the result? From 21st the previous year to 7th in 2011, Dale Earnhardt Jr. had a resurgence, seemingly overnight too. He came close to breaking that nasty winless streak too. The 2011 Coke 600 was one of these moments. But while he was as consistent as one could be, the trophy case remained empty. However, on June 17, 2012, everything changed. Earnhardt dominated the 2012 Quicken Loans 400 in Michigan, leading 95 laps and winning, snapping a 143-race winless streak, almost 4 years to the day after his last win on June 15, 2008. Number 8, Aric Almirola, 149 races. In 2015, if you asked anyone what their opinion on Aric Almirola was, they would probably say, who? Okay, in all seriousness, in 2015, Aric Almirola was looked upon as a journeyman driver. Dumped from Joe Gibbs Racing, rot from the dying days of DEI, banished to the Truck Series and having to climb back up the development ladder, through JRM and Nationwide, and finally, after almost half a decade, into Cup. With who? Richard Petty Motorsports, the same team who hadn't really tasted clean air since John Andretti. Okay, I'll admit, they had some good runs with AJ Allmendinger prior years, but nothing ever materialized. They had the potential to be something great, but needed a wheelman. In 2014, Aric Almirola recorded his first career win at the rain-shortened Coke Zero 400, making the inaugural knockout-style chase. It wasn't like it was a fluke either. From 2014 to 2015, Almirola proved to be a solid chase-caliber driver. However, every house has a ceiling, and the ceiling is pretty low at RPM. He had pretty much maxed out the potential the team had. So what's next? Just being an RPM lifer? Well, SHR just fanned out the last whiffs of Danica Mania, so let's join that car. Nobody knew what potential this car had, considering the driver behind it only showed flashes of brilliance. So, what did it have? Well, Almirola nearly won the Daytona 500 in his first start with the team and would go on to have the best year of his career, snapping a long winless streak at Talladega where his team absolutely dominated the race and going on to finish 5th in points. 5th, in a season dominated by Joey Logano and the dubbed Big Three. Number 7, Terry Labonte, 156 races. Nicknamed the Iron Man for making the most consecutive starts, there was nothing that could deter Texas Terry Labonte. Well, except the angry glare of the racing gods, of course. After winning his second championship with only 2 wins compared to his teammates' 10, Labonte slowly trickled down into the midfield, getting only 1 win a season between 1997 and 1999 and finishing 6th, 9th, and then 12th in points. Father Time was beginning to catch up with the driver of the Kellogg's 5. He went winless between 2000 and 2002, finishing 17th, then 23rd, then 24th in points. At this point, the pattern is too evident. Surely Rick Hendrick will boot him out of the organization. Well, let's just give him a few more years. Maybe something will change. Not only did he finish 10th in points in 2003, but whatever did change, it worked. Because on August 31st, 2003, Labonte outdueled the likes of Harvick, Newman, Johnson, and McMurray en route to his final victory of his career. Number 6, Jamie McMurray, 165 races. It's kind of odd to say someone burst onto the racing scene because the lower the division is, the more successful you'll find someone you don't deem successful will be. But if anybody wants to hold a candle to the saying, at least in the Cup Series, it'd be Jamie McMurray. After a violent crash at Kansas, series points leader Sterling Marlin would be sidelined for the rest of 2002. His replacement for the rest of the season, barring Martinsville, would be Bruco Motorsports Busch Series driver Jamie McMurray. McMurray was a solid driver at best, and would keep the nose clean ahead of Marlin's return in 2003. He won't do anything special, but he'll be a nice placeholder for sure. Wait, what? He won in his second start? Not only did he win, but he led the most laps too. There was some serious potential here, so Chip Ganassi hired him full-time for 2003. He would prove to be a top 15 driver at best, so eventually both parties moved on. McMurray moved to Roush for 2006, and it seemed like he had just self-destructed his career. Take the finishes he had in 2005 and subtract 10 from them, and you'll basically get the statistics for 2006. Things were only mildly improving in 2007, but he did show speed in qualifying, having won a pole at Sonoma. 2 weeks later, on July 7, 2007, he would finally break through, creating one of the most memorable finishes in NASCAR history. Jamie McMurray and Kyle Busch ran side by side for nearly 32 laps. McMurray defeated Busch to win the Pepsi 400 in a margin of victory that was just .005 seconds, tied for the second closest margin in NASCAR history since electronic scoring and timing was adopted in 1993. Number 5, Sterling Marlin, 170 races. Well, that was Sterling Marlin's replacement, but how about we talk about the man himself? Decimating the competition on the play tracks, Morgan McClure Motorsports built an empire on these joints. One driver that was a benefactor of this was Sterling Marlin, who won 2 Daytona 500s, 2 Talladega 500s, and 1 Firecracker Pepsi 400. After a dismal 1997 season where he went winless, he moved to Team Sabco for 1998. He improved considerably, but drivers aren't here to ride around in the middle, they want to be on top. And when motorsports tycoon Chip Ganassi bought Team Sabco, you knew things were going to turn around. And they did. On August 19, 2001, everyone's questions as to whether one of the most consistent drivers of the season would actually win would be answered, as Marlin finally did it. He went on to collect another win at Charlotte and finished 3rd in points. Number 4, Jeff Burton, 175 races. In the late 90s, it seemed like no one could beat the unstoppable combination between crew chief Ray Evernham and driver Jeff Gordon. Ask and it shall be given, and it seemed like all they had to do was ask for the trophy to come to them, and it came. If anyone was going to stand in between Hendrick and the trophy case, it would be Roush. Mark Martin, try as he may, dueled Gordon to the very last checkered flag on each season that fell to no avail. But he wasn't the only one on his team who tried. Nicknamed the Mayor, Jeff Burton also helped Roush get ever closer to being the talk of the Champions Banquet. Between 1997 and 2000, he finished no worse than 5th in points. However, in 2001, he finished a measly 10th. Though to be fair, Roush as a whole was off. It seemed like he had scored his final win of his career at Phoenix in 2001. A few more winless seasons, being fired by the Cat in the Hat, relegating him to the struggling Richard Childress Racing spelled nothing but disaster, at least on paper. In practice, well, he recorded several poles and was consistent enough to qualify for the 2006 chase. In the first race of the chase, he finished a respectable 7th, true to his top 10 stride he boasted the entire year. What about the second race? Well, that was the Dover 400, held on September 24th. Jeff Gordon won the pole, but it was another Jeff that would break a 175 winless streak after Matt Kenseth ran out of fuel at the white flag. Number 3, Clint Bowyer, 190 races. We started out talking about the drivers that just seemed to have bad luck and transitioned into the territory where some would have given up ages ago. But now we sort of get into the territory where it just seems like the drivers just downright cursed. Up first is Clint Bowyer. Through the Richard Childress Racing stint of Bowyer's career, he showed that he had the talent to be a title contender. In 2007, it was Jimmy and Jeff who duked it out for the championship. But behind both of these drivers was Clint Bowyer, the only driver who could challenge the unbeatable Hendrick cars. In 2008, he won the Nationwide Series title. But after some lackluster campaigns in the late 2000s, it was time for a change. Michael Waltrip Racing. Having spent the last 2 years before 2012 trying to convince the garage that they were not a joke and that their employees were not as buffoon-like as the team boss, they were in desperate need of a title contender. Well, how about Clint Bowyer? Effectively doing what Ross Chastain has done this year in 2022, he exploded into a championship contender, scoring 3 wins and dueling Brad Keselowski for the championship. He lost, but there's always 2013. Leading up to Richmond, round 26 in 2013, Bowyer was a consistent driver that was at the very least going to make the chase. And then it happened. Spingate, as it's come to be known, is a long and convoluted story that plenty have covered already. But in essence, MWR incurred some chicanery to get Truex into the chase. How? By telling Clint Bowyer to, quote, itch his arm, or in other words, spin the car out, intentionally. From this point forward, it seemed like Bowyer was cursed. Until 2017, he never won again, never was competitive, and was even sentenced to what is the equivalent of Rick Ware Racing today in 2016. Help came in the form of an unlikely ally in Tony Stewart, who chose Bowyer to be his replacement. The first year required some acclimation, but in the second year, he shot out of a cannon. At the 2018 STP 500 held on March 26th, Bowyer beat the dominant car of Ryan Blaney, the short-track ace of Denny Hamlin, and steered clear of the front bumper of Kyle Busch to break the curse that had haunted him for 6 years. Number 2, Martin Truex Jr., 218 races. While it was at MWR where Bowyer's curse began, it was with MWR where Truex's ended. On June 3, 2007, Martin Truex Jr. grabbed his first career win at Dover, well clear of his competitors. But this is DEI we're talking about here, and things would only go downhill from there. This was the only home Truex ever knew, and a team that had given him, well, everything. He couldn't just leave. Merger after merger, spin after crash, he remained loyal to the very end. In 2010, he moved over to MWR, which was about the only option he had. As I mentioned, this team was not taken too seriously, but one driver who brought respect to the brand was MTJ. The next few years would see him put together some consistent campaigns, and on June 23, 2013, he'd be rewarded for his efforts. Leading 51 out of the 110 laps, most in the field at Sonoma, he would go on to break a 6-year winless streak. Number 1, Bill Elliott, 226 races. So who's the unlucky guy that had to wait eons before a trophy was brought to their doorstep? Well, it was none other than Austin Bill from Dawsonville. Elliott's fame primarily came in the 9 car when he was at Melling Racing, winning a championship and a couple Daytona 500s. However, if Melling pays you thousands of dollars, Junior Johnson can get you millions. So when the offer came, $1 million Bill stepped up to the plate. The results were pretty much the same as Melling. But Bill wanted to own his own team, not be under somebody. So he partnered with Charles Hardy's team for the 1995 season to form Elliott Hardy Racing. The new team premiered at the 1995 Daytona 500 as the number 94 Ford with McDonald's sponsoring. Elliott's first year as an owner/driver was marked with 11 top 10s, 2 poles, and an 8th place finish in the points. After a horrific crash in 1996 at Talladega, Elliott missed several races to recover from his injuries. In July 1996, the partnership between Elliott and Hardy was dissolved. The team was renamed to Bill Elliott Racing. Returning full-time in 1997, Elliott had 14 top 10s and another 8th place points finish. Elliott's operation went multi-car full-time in 1998, teaming up with Dan Marino. The team was renamed to Elliott Marino Racing. After a disappointing 1999 season, which saw his multi-car operation dissolve back into the number 94 car, Elliott announced in early 2000 he was selling his equipment to championship-winning crew chief Ray Evernham to become part of Dodge's return to NASCAR. The team would also switch to the number 9. All that just to be an independent. On top of that, he had a horrible winless streak going for himself. But Evernham just came off a dominant 90s stretch, so let's give this new abode the benefit of the doubt. He ran in the teens for most of the season, and it seemed like he was just going to quietly retire as a mid-pack driver. But on November 11th, 2001, for the 2001 Pennzoil Freedom 400 at Homestead, Miami, Elliott did the unthinkable, snapping a winless streak that had latched onto him like a dead mosquito. So, with all of that being said, which one of these winless streaks do you remember the most? Did you ever think that one of these drivers would snap it? What did you think of when they did? Let me know all of this and more in the comment section below. And until next time, this has been the news. I'll see you.